There are some 270 flood myths in various cultures past and present. Drowning must be very popular as a horror story, or possibly there was an actual flood way back when. My interest lies in the mechanical aspects of such a flood. In order to be pretty much universal, it would have to affect nearly everyone on the planet, say as much as 95% of them. Is it actually possible within the laws of physics and geology to make such a catastrophe? A large meteor impact might do it, but that would have not just caused a flood. We wouldn't even be here now discussing it. That's too great a cataclysm. I can see only one scenario that would fill the bill, and it may have occurred many times in the past as well. This would be a sudden release of a freshwater ocean at the end of an ice age, sufficient to inundate all the Earth's coastal areas. The mechanics are fairly simple. As glaciers develop over most of a continent, the oceans are lowered a few hundred feet, exposing the continental shelves. People go there to live because it is flat, has good soil for growing, lots of game to hunt, and navigable rivers run through it to the ocean. It's much better than trying to claw out a living in a rock-strewn mountain range, though there would be some diehards there as well, just for the view and because they were simply born there. Even today, the bulk of the Earth's population lives within 100 miles of the ocean. So, as the glaciers melt, the ocean rises and all those people have to march to higher ground, say 100 miles inland, where the continental shelf meets the rest of the continent, as we see now in this present warm period. The problem comes if the water rises 100 to 200 feet in maybe 2 days. You can't get your stuff together with farm animals and wife and kids and force march 100 miles in 2 days. So nearly 100% of these people would drown. This would indeed start a universal flood myth if it occurred at the end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago. It would also have set back the advance of civilization severely, for it had already reached the level of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey 12,000 years ago. I certainly don't think these artifacts are 6,000 years behind the Giza pyramids. Maybe 600 years, but not 6,000. The continents have central bulges in them, caused by the fact that they insulate the magma beneath them better than the deep ocean. The thermohaline deep circulation of the ocean keeps the ocean plates at a temperature just above freezing perpetually. But if you go down several hundred feet below the continental plates, the heat rises dramatically, till at mine depths exceeding a mile, it's not economically feasible to work there, unless you're getting lots of gold or diamonds. This central bulge makes the water form rivers and run off back to the sea. Now the sea level could be anywhere in the basin, up to the continent, or lapping over the continent, and on up the incline to the top of the bulge. The Earth happens to have enough water to lap over the continents, generally a couple hundred miles. So as ice ages come and go, the water rises and recedes over and over, and wears away a notch in the continents that constitutes the continental shelf. Remember here that ocean water can only wear away continents at the beach, where the waves break. When the water is significantly deep, the greatest storms produce no wave action disturbance at all way down there. The fact that there are continental shelves is a testament to the fact that there have been very many ice ages. Let's build up those ice caps now. During the last ice age, the North American glacier covered this much. It was as much as 2.5 miles thick. The ocean water level changes by several hundred feet. All this happens gradually. So does the melting as the ice age comes to an end. Unfortunately, by the physics of water and ice, a freshwater ocean is likely to form in the middle of the glacier that covers the continent. The reason that it forms is that water takes up less volume than ice, about 10% less. So when you see an iceberg, 90% of it is below the surface of the ocean. Because water takes up less space than ice when it melts, it forms a relative hole in the glacier. This hole becomes deeper the more that melting occurs. It also reverses the inclination of the continental surface that causes river water to run off the continent back into the ocean. The reversal is for two reasons. First, the weight of the ice pushes down the continent more at the center where the ice is thickest. And secondly, because of the former reason, when it melts it makes a hole. Meltwater now forms a flow to the center of the continent, while some still flows to the ocean off the glacier's edges. As the water gets deeper, its albedo decreases. It reflects less light than the edges of the glacier that retain an ice-air interface. Remember that at the edges of the glacier, the water either runs off to the ocean or to the center of the continent. It can never pool at the edges. It goes one way or the other. So the albedo of the edge is always greater than the interior of the glacier when the center is water. Thus the center of the glacier gets lower than the edge, even though both are lowering due to melting. It's just that the center goes lower faster. This is the source of the freshwater ocean. It can't leak out via underground tunnels. Ice is not nearly as strong as granite, and will deform to self-seal any such tunnel. Eventually you get a freshwater ocean, perhaps 1 million square miles in area, and 2 miles deep. Sooner or later it's going to bust out. It has to. The edges are in fact melting as well. When such a freshwater ocean forms, it can only end catastrophically. As soon as the interior ocean starts cascading down the edge to the saltwater ocean, the breach begins to widen. In fact, it will rip out the area of the edge where it is now cascading in just a few minutes. We have pictures of earth dams breaking. Once it gets going, it just tears everything out. Dams always break catastrophically. If the breach is a 2-mile deep gorge, the water will roar out at the terminal velocity of an object dropped from 2 miles up with no air resistance. That's about 400 miles per hour. This means that the entire freshwater ocean 2 miles deep over all of Canada and part of the USA will clear out in probably less than 2 days. This will raise the oceans a couple hundred feet all over the earth in 2 days. You can't outrun it if you live on the edge of the continental shelf. Accompanying this catastrophe will be worldwide earthquakes triggered by moving such a mass off the continent and onto the continental shelves. Tsunamis everywhere would be the norm. No structure would be left standing with the exception of perhaps some stone wall that happened to be parallel to the inrushing water. Weather patterns would shift quickly and catastrophically, and would remain messed up because the thermohaline conveyor belt current of the deep ocean may perhaps stop for a time due to the infusion of all that fresh water. A few quick-witted men might manage to save themselves and their families if they could cut down a stand of trees and lash them together with ropes to form a flotsam raft. Such a raft would generally move inland with the rising water. Animals of every sort would try to get on the raft to save themselves too. With a little embellishment, this would become Noah's Ark. Monument Valley is said to have been formed by meandering rivers over millions of years. To me, the monuments look too widely spaced to have been cut by river action. It should look like the Grand Canyon, where the distance between features is proportional to the height of those features. This is because they are formed by undercutting the base of an obstruction till it falls off by gravity, and these new obstruction pieces can't be wider than they are tall by the physics of gravity and rock tensile strength. To me, Monument Valley looks like a washout from an ancient freshwater ocean release. It would have formed in just a day or two by a 400-mile-per-hour water flow. The monuments are just what's left when the water finished running out. The breach would have been a few miles wide. I could be wrong here. I haven't done any meaningful investigation. It just looks wrong to me.